We had a bridge group, and when Monica Conroy and Frank moved to Port Huron, Monica was talking about the town hall program in Detroit, and she really missed it. So we were talking, we said, well, why don't we have a town hall in Port Huron? And that's really what started the thing.
The idea was presented as to, would you think this would be a good idea for Port Huron? And celebrities coming in, and it would cost X number of dollars, but it was just a very infant idea. And at that stage, we had no place that we could even present it, other than probably the Desmond Theater, which was then the Desmond Theater. So it kind of grew. It was sort of like a brainstorming idea, if that's what you want to call it. One of the first people that came for Town Hall, as I recall, was Cornelia Otis Skinner. And we were so enthralled with her and her background because she really, well, she was a lady of means, and her behavior was so proper and perfect, and we were all just a fright trying to do things for her. And I mean, it just was so dry and awful, we really tried. And she just, well, she really wasn't very entertaining at all, and she wasn't very pleasant. And of course, the toilets at the theater were pretty bad too, and we had to take her to that. And it wasn't a good choice, really. But everybody liked her, I guess.
Mamie Hall and I were on the reception committee, and we would meet the guests at the Desmond Theater. And the Desmond Theater ladies' room was not in very good shape. So we would take our little bag with our fancy soap, our towels, and everything to straighten it up so our celebrity could use the ladies' room in the Desmond.
Would you really like to know?
Yeah.
I thought it was a bunch of old ladies who got together and went to the theater and went out to lunch. And I found out it wasn't.
What was it?
They got wonderfully dressed up, and they came on a Monday morning, and it wasn't that at all. It was a very educational, entertaining, sort of a adventure for all of us.
What I liked is it was very broadening coming to Town Hall. You besides meeting new people and getting a lot of new fields opened up to you, these speakers brought in things, topics and discussions and facts that we never would have been able to comprehend or get if we hadn't had the opportunity to hear these people. It was a very great privilege and opportunity to belong to it. Once you came to one session, you were really hooked.
No, they didn't even think about men at the time. I will be honest. I think they were kind of happy to see this happen, to tell you the truth. Because this came from, really, as I said before, women's auxiliaries of the hospitals. And they were all women. And the men were very happy about that. They liked that money-raising thing. And they knew that that's what it would be.
It wasn't that we only had women on our programs. If you look over our programs, I would think at least a third or more have been men. But the women, many of them were home-raising families, and they wanted something more than just going out to lunch. And most of the people that came to town hall, this was a special day for them. They loved going out afterwards to the luncheons that we had for them. So it was a special time for us.
And gradually, I think, the younger gals are finding now that more men are interested in this kind of thing, because some retiring earlier, and the availability is are enjoying it. And some women now are passing their tickets along to the men if they can't go. And they're enjoying it. And it's fun seeing them, I think.
I know I've invited my husband and my brother and my father at different times, and they've all come for different things, whether it's a history buff or like the Antiques Roadshow kind of show, when Henry Winkler was here. They're not people that just speak to women, and so I've tried to find different shows that have appealed to them, and they've ended up coming and loving the fact that they came. And they just take the hour, they don't go to lunch after, they go back to work or wherever they have to go.
It's being with friends on the board, friends that are as part of the audience, and the opportunity to meet new members of the audience by greeting them at the door and greeting them at the entrance to the auditorium itself, and it's an opportunity to treat other people graciously. You know, it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. So many other occasions are so callous or so blank in what they have to offer, and this is just lush, full of warmth and welcoming.
Lots of times, I think in the past, they didn't have all the talent available, but television brought in so much talent that, and the talent that people recognized, and we needed recognizable people to come here and entertain, and they came.
When ladies come to town hall in the morning, they want to be entertained. They want it to be fun. They want it to be interesting. They want it to be something that they'll remember, and something that they'll laugh at, or that they'll smile at, or that they'll learn something from.
Growing up in a big city, you kind of take for granted the arts and the different things that are out there. And you didn't realize that a small town like Port Huron could have, I would say, a high-profile speaking lecture series.
And I really just kind of fell in love with it. I felt like it was like I was living in a big city, even though I could raise my family in a small town. And every time I would come to a performance, I would learn so much, or I would just feel lighter, or like I've learned something. I was kind of changed. You know, once the lights go down and then the curtain opens, I mean, I feel like this could be our little Hollywood.
A lot of our speakers are Hollywood. I think that's a draw for the community. I think people, when they see a celebrity's name, they go, wow, I want to see that person. And then we also like to intermix people that we know that maybe people aren't quite aware of, but we have researched and found that they may be interesting to this community, something that they can bring to the community and educate us that way. And most of the time, some of our less known performers are actually some of the best, we find, and that's a lot of fun too.
Yeah, I think these town halls are a tradition that go back to the Greeks. I think one reason that town halls and things like this are successful and should be done much more is that direct personal intercontact with the storyteller rather than the boob tube is an experience it's quite different than television.
Storytelling is very important. It gives us a sense of who we are, the people who touch our lives, and where we can go in the future. It's not something that everybody is able to do.
Telling stories is a skill. It's like acting. I'm not a very good actor, but I can tell stories. And there are all kinds of things like timing that are extremely important. And you learn about, but the only way you learn about it is by doing it.
Let's hear it for the cheap seats.
And that's why I thought Henry Winkler was so good, because his timing was just wonderful.
Tony Randall was excellent that way also. Perfect timing. That's a big factor. And then some of these people are really professional speakers. Some of them were historians or individuals who had written books. That makes a big difference.
Sid Charisse, she was our headliner one year, and she was unable to attend because she had the flu, I think, or there was a family illness, something. So the night before, or the day before, they were scrambling to find a speaker, and they brought in G. Gordon Liddy. And we actually got mail that was not too happy that we chose him as a speaker. They thought it was very inappropriate, very un-American, and not something that Port Huron Town Hall should have done. So we actually have been controversial.
And Gordon Liddy, he talked war constantly from beginning to end. But so he talked tough and kill and bled and death. And that's the way he talked. And so did his talk. It was unbelievable.
One of the most interesting stories that I had during my presidency, or probably during my whole town hall experience, was the year that we had Henry Kissinger. And that was 1987, and I was president. And we had spent so much time trying to get him to come and trying to figure out if we could afford it, and decided that finally we were going to bite the bullet and we were going to do it. And so we got him. So we come about 2 days before Henry Kissinger is coming, and the committee chairman gets a call. And it's his secretary, and she wants to point it out to us that he will not be staying in Port Huron the night before like they usually do. And therefore, we will not be needing to pay for the Thomas Edison Inn for the room, but they would appreciate being reimbursed for that expense because it would be an expense that we would have if he stayed. And so the program chairman came and said, we have, a little concern. They would like to be paid for the Thomas Edison room that they're not going to use the night before. And I said, gee, that's a very interesting request, but it isn't going to happen. And so we get another call back. Well, she said, I don't know whether he'll like that or not getting paid for the room when we're flying our private jet, and it's going to be very expensive. And so I said to the program chairman, did you point out that we didn't care if he brought his private jet? And, I think he can probably afford to pay for that. But tell her that we aren't going to pay for the room. We're not going to give them the money for a hotel room they don't use.
I got called by some good friends one day, Julie Moak in particular, said that the town hall girls were bringing in a very famous celebrity into Port Huron, and they needed our limousine to go to the St. Clair County Airport to pick Henry Kissinger up. And I don't normally get an opportunity to pick Henry Kissinger up, so I volunteered to take on that responsibility. And so we went to the airport early one Monday morning, And he piles out of the plane and hops in the back of the limo, and he turns to Julie Moak and says, "So you're the terror of Port Huron." And that was my first introduction to Henry Kissinger here.
I mean, I was amazed. I couldn't understand what he was saying. And she said, "Wow, you terrorized my office. Not giving them something they wanted. They wanted you to pay for a room and you wouldn't do it." And I said, "Well, I guess that, that was a decision that I had to make." And it was the principle of the thing, Mr. Kissinger. And he looked at me and he said, "You're absolutely right. Good for you. I'm here and I'm delighted to be here and we're going to have a great time. Let's go."
And appropriations is a wonderful thing. Every year we have, since we started, we have given a donation to some local organization that is a charitable organization.
And sometimes it goes to the museum, sometimes it's gone to music programs at the elementary school, it's gone to the hospitals in the past, to the auxiliary. So depending on what the recommendations that come into the Appropriations Committee, they look them over and then they make a decision, bring it back to the board, and that's how that is done.
We would like to think that we could have done a lot more over the years for the local charities, but it's so expensive to get talent that we have to put that first and then make sure that we have enough that we can give to some organizations.
I do know that our celebrity prices continue to increase. We will get, sometimes in August when we are starting to work on our performances for the next year, we will be given a certain price for a performer, and within a month, before we've even booked the person, their rate may have increased. And sometimes they will increase themselves out of our budget. So that is a way that sometimes, a performer will eliminate themselves, somebody that we'd like to try and see. I know that people have often, asked, can we bring Oprah, can we bring Dr. Phil? They are definitely way out of our price range.
You could not get 5 tickets to anything for the price that they're asking. People in Port Huron are used to going to the movie, and they're not used to having a live speaker come to town. And I think it's hard to differentiate for some people because they don't realize that if they went to Detroit or Ann Arbor or any of these cities, these same speakers are there and they're charging 3 and 4 times as much for tickets.
We interrupt this program to bring you an important message regarding the Port Huron Town Hall Luncheon. Your former luncheon chairperson, Andrea Cansfield.
The luncheon is very fun and it's very reasonably priced. You get 5 lunches. Each one is $17. That includes a wonderful lunch at a beautiful establishment like Port Huron Golf Club, Thomas Edison Inn, Four Lakes Golf Club. You can actually meet the speaker, get your picture taken with the speaker, have an autograph, have a book signed. It's a really great value.
Thank you, and now back to our regular programming.
Back in the 60s and 70s, we did not have reserved seats. And some of these people would come before the auditorium doors were open.
My first performance that I came to Town Hall, I think I was a little unaware of how it all took place. The performance on my ticket said 10:30, so of course I arrived at about a quarter after, and I was amazed to see that there was a line on the street. And I thought, oh my goodness. And I understand that it was general seating, so I think that the people that got here at 9 o'clock were at the front of the door, and once the doors opened, there was sort of a mad rush to get in. And I, being a younger person, probably in my early 30s, was always trying to be very respectful of my elders, and they would hustle to get those front seats, let me tell you. And I was a little intimidated by that at first.
What was it like? It was pandemonium for about 15 minutes.
We lost a few people to all of this who said, well, we're not going to buy a ticket until we can reserve our own seat. Well, we just couldn't do that. That was, I think without computers, it was almost impossible to handle 1,169 seats on our own.
I have to say, too, that I think we were so terribly formal. And I can remember my dear friend Jo, who really was Jo West, she should be mentioned, God love her, because she was pretty much the stem of a lot of this, because she loved it all and we just couldn't get her to be president.
And I watched the group function, and it was just amazing to me how there weren't arguments over how we were going to do things or what we were going to do. And I kept thinking, in any woman's group, there's a lot of arguing that goes on. But if any crossword or argument about how we're going to do this, are we going to have assigned seats or open seats? If it got to be any kind of an argument, we had this little voice in the background. Her name was Jo West. And she'd say, "Keep it classy, girls, keep it classy." So she would never let us get into any kind of turmoil so that anyone felt bad about anybody else in the group. So it got to be a well-respected group of gals that belonged, and I think it's kept that way.
I think it's amazing how many women believed in it enough to set it up. I mean, that must have been a challenge, and I think it's just amazing how they've done that and how the support was behind them to do it.
I definitely think it'll be here in 50 years because the women that are on the board right now are very strong, see into the future, I think, like the women that were here 50 years ago. And it may change, it definitely will change. Who knows, there might be a man on the board.
And the fact that the ladies who started this organization, we owe them so much because this has gone on for 50 years. These ladies started something that they didn't know if it would succeed or not.
I don't think I gave it much thought. I didn't think I'd be here, let alone town hall.
We were talking about when Eleanor Roosevelt came. She was a dear. She had a mink coat that was so heavy from top to bottom, I could hardly lift it. And I remember when we got her out to Black River Country Club for the luncheon, I had to get that mink coat, and I had to have help to get it on a hanger. Oh, those are the days of real sport. They were the fun days.